Welcome. Today we're taking a walk through a pretty unique art gallery. The exhibit? One of the most visual, unforgettable chapters in the entire Bible, Proverbs 26. This isn't about dry theology, not at all. It's a collection of incredibly sharp character portraits. So, let's start the tour.
Proverbs 26 is just packed with these word pictures that are so powerful, they're almost impossible to forget once you hear them. Our whole goal here is to take those words and turn them into a clear visual gallery, making the wisdom of this chapter stick with you for good.
All right, first up, we're stepping into the first wing of our gallery. This whole section is dedicated to just one character, the fool. The author of Proverbs paints this picture from every possible angle, so let's check out each portrait one by one.
Verse 1 kicks things off with an image that's just wrong. Picture a farmer who has worked all season long, his crops are golden and ready to bring in, and then a freak snowstorm hits, in the middle of summer. That's the picture. Giving honor to a fool isn't just a bad idea, it's completely unnatural, out of place, and it actually does real damage.
Now for verse 2. Imagine someone is just furious with you, totally red in the face, screaming curses. But instead of hitting you, their angry words literally turn into little sparrows and swallows that just kind of flutter around you before flying off. That's the whole idea here. If you don't deserve a curse, it has absolutely no power to land on you. Verse 3 shows us a wall with a few tools hanging on it, each one for a specific job. Think of it like this. On one hook, there's a whip for a horse. On the next, a bridle for a donkey. And on the third, a rod. The point is simple. Just like certain animals need specific tools to guide them, a fool requires sharp, direct correction. The consequence fits the behavior. Okay, verse 4. Let's paint a picture. You're standing on the edge of a huge mud pit, and in the middle of it is someone totally covered in mud just yelling absolute nonsense. They're begging you to jump in and argue with them. This verse is a huge warning sign. If you jump into their mud pit to fight on their terms, what happens? You just get covered in mud yourself.
But wait a second. This is where things get really interesting. In fact, it's one of the most famous head-scratchers in the book of Proverbs, because the very next verse seems to say the complete opposite. So, what's the deal? Are we supposed to answer a fool or not?
And here is the genius of it. Verse 4 says, "Don't get down in the mud with them. Don't start playing by their twisted rules." But then verse 5 says to answer a fool according to his folly, to expose how silly he's being so he doesn't get arrogant. So the wisdom is all about why you answer. You're not there to play their game, you're there to end it. Moving on to verse 6, and the imagery here gets pretty intense, but that's why it works. Imagine someone needs to send a critical life or death message, but instead of picking someone reliable, they give it to a person they know is a fool. The verse says, this is like taking a saw and literally cutting off your own feet. You've made your own success impossible. Trusting a fool with something important is basically an act of self-sabotage.
So it's really interesting here how verses 7 and 9 use two totally different pictures to get at the same idea. A wise saying coming from a fool is, first, like the dangling, useless legs of a lame person. They're there, but they can't get you anywhere. And second, it's like a thorny branch in the hand of a drunk. He's just waving it around, clueless about the damage and pain he's causing. So wise words from a fool are either totally useless or they're downright dangerous.
And this idea is hammered home again brilliantly in verse 8. Picture David getting ready to face Goliath. He's got his sling, a really powerful weapon. But instead of just putting the stone in the pouch, he takes the time to tie it in with a bunch of knots, fixing it permanently to the leather. What did he just do? He made his own weapon completely useless. That's what happens when you give honor to a fool. You destroy potential.
All right, verse 11, it's graphic, and honestly, that's why it's so memorable. The image is stomach-turning, a dog returning to its own vomit. It's supposed to be repulsive. The point is, a fool going back to his destructive ways isn't some well-thought-out decision. It's a gross, compulsive, unthinking habit. And this whole portrait gallery of the fool ends with a pretty stunning twist in verse 12. After all that we've just seen, we're told there's someone in an even worse position. Imagine the fool, maybe looking up with a little confusion. Maybe there's a chance to teach him. Now, picture another guy who's looking at nothing but his own reflection in a mirror, totally convinced he has all the answers. The verse says there's more hope for the fool, because at least he might listen. The proud man is completely unteachable. Okay, let's move on to the next wing of the gallery for a brand new character study, the lazy person, or the sluggard. And this isn't just about someone who likes to sleep in. This is about a person who is a master of excuses and self-deception.
So we kick this section off with verse 13. Picture a guy, perfectly safe inside his house. It's a beautiful day. He needs to go out and get to work. But he peeks out the window and shouts, "I can't! There's a lion in the road." But the street is totally empty. He's inventing this wild, terrifying excuse just to justify doing nothing.
Verse 14 gives us this fantastic picture of motion without any progress. I mean, think about a door. It swings open, it swings shut. Back and forth, back and forth. It's definitely moving, but it's not actually going anywhere. It's stuck right there in its frame. That's the sluggard in his bed, just turning from one side to the other. All motion, zero destination.
The exaggeration in verse 15 is just fantastic. Get this image. A person so lazy that they've actually managed to get their hand into a bowl of food, but the tiny bit of effort it would take to lift that food to their mouth it's too much. They're exhausted just thinking about it. It's this absurd picture showing how laziness can fight against our most basic instincts, like eating.
And this section on the sluggard wraps up with this zinger. In his own head, the lazy person is a certified genius. Picture him lounging on his couch, but in his mind, it's a throne. And there's a whole council of 7 wise advisors giving him excellent, sensible advice. And he just kind of waves them away, totally convinced that his flimsy excuses are way smarter than their solid counsel.
And now we are entering the final and maybe the most intense wing of our gallery. These next few portraits are all about the people who start trouble, spread it, and keep it going.
And here it is, the verse from the very beginning, verse 17. Let's really see this. You're walking down the street and you see a stray dog that's all worked up. And for no good reason, you decide to just grab it by the ears. Not the collar, the ears. What happens next? The dog absolutely freaks out, and now you're stuck. You can't hold on, but you can't let go without getting bitten. You've jumped into a painful, no-win situation that had nothing to do with you. That's meddling.
Verses 18 and 19 give us a genuinely terrifying image. Picture a madman, just wild-eyed, randomly throwing flaming torches and sharp arrows into a crowd of people. And then when everyone is hurt and panicking, he just laughs and says, "Hey, what's the big deal? It was just a joke." That's how seriously the Bible takes someone who hurts people on purpose and then tries to play it off as a harmless prank. Verse 21 gives us the simple but powerful formula for how conflict works. You need fuel to make a fire, right? You add wood to coals to get a blaze. It's direct cause and effect. Well, in the exact same way, a troublemaker, a contentious person, is the fuel that ignites and feeds an argument. And as verse 20 says, the reverse is also true. Take away the wood, the fire goes out. Take away the gossip, the fight dies down. And these last few verses give us this rapid-fire breakdown of how deception works. First, verse 22 says gossip isn't just fuel, it's like a tasty snack that we eagerly swallow and it goes down deep inside of us. Then the chapter warns us that smooth talk can just be a cover for a wicked heart, like putting a cheap glaze on a clay pot to make it look like solid silver. But there's a promise here that hidden hatred will eventually come out into the open. And finally, the chapter ends with this ultimate boomerang effect. The trap you dig for somebody else is the very one you're going to fall into yourself. So, as we walk out of this gallery, the last question is for you. The guy grabbing the dog by the ears? The man who's literally too lazy to eat? The curse that turns into a bird? Which one of these portraits is going to stick in your head? Because that's probably the one that has the most important lesson for you right now.